Welcome, listeners and viewers, back to the Cameo Launch Short Film Showcase. I'm your host, Nigel Morgan, and we are pumped to be back with our first filmmaker interview of 2022. Joining me today is writer and director Chris Danuser of Sparkyboom LLC Productions, and he's going to be talking to us about his new short film, Pap's Manifesto. Now, Chris co-directed and co-wrote this film with Casey Clark, whose credits as an actor, director, and writer go back to the early 2000s. This film was also produced by Jeremiah Bennett, who has an extensive history of producing short films, feature films, and television. Jeremiah is also the current chairman of the Atlanta chapter of the Producers Guild of America. Now, Chris established his production company as a means to tell stories that share experiences of the American South, focusing on themes such as grief, loss, and redemption. His new film, Pap's Manifesto, touches on all of these themes as a grieving Gold Star dad. The titular Pap, played by Chris Triaca, swears vengeance for his son killed on deployment in Afghanistan and hatches a plan to bomb a mosque. Complications ensue that force Pap to reckon with the bitterness that threatens to consume him. So enough of me talking. Here to tell us more about the movie is its co-writer and co-director, Chris Danuser. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Nigel, so good to be here. Thanks for that introduction. You make me out to be kind of fancy, so thank you.
No, well, I'm just going off not only your background, but the film itself, which was fantastic. Absolutely loved it. It's a very, very powerful piece of work. It really draws you in just from the opening shot. You just kind of lean into the story. The performances are so amazing, from the main character through to the little girl as well that's in the movie. It's just a fantastic piece of work. So well done. Congratulations to you and your team for getting that made. How's it been received so far? It's currently on the festival circuit, is that right?
It is, and we are doing quite well. Never thought we would do so well. Currently, we have 14 or so wins. A dozen jury awards and quite a few nominations, 12 or 13 nominations.
Amazing.
So we're very happy for this little project.
Very good. Very good. And, I touched on the premise of the film very briefly just now. Would you mind taking us a little deeper into what the film's about and kind of what drew you towards telling this particular story?
Yeah. Pap's Manifesto is ultimately about grace and about those moments in everyone's life where there's a redirection and it's inexplicable, right? And a lot of times it's a mystical type thing that happens in your life and you can't explain it. Most of us, go through our life not even realizing how it is constantly, affected by, the mystical or just coincidences, simpatico. So I feel like when I initially sat down to write it, I did want to write a story about grace. And I tried to make that the line through the entire thing. Now, of course, stories, change. And after films are edited, certain things are changed. But I'm very happy that, we were able to keep that theme in this picture. It's also a story of redemption. It's a story of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a story about the horrors of war. All of these things are touched on in the film. To answer your question about what got me started on this story, I've been a writer for quite a few years. However, this was the first short film that I had ever written. And it was initially not going to be, viewed by anyone. Ultimately, it was never going to be a production. It was an exercise for me to write a little bit more condensed story, with the hopes that it would be like a writing sample for television writing. And as it went along, I started seeing like a very like a beautiful story. I am very influenced by a Southern United States writer. Particularly, she's from my hometown in Georgia. She's quite famous. Her name is Flannery O'Connor. She wrote in the 50s. She's best known for her short stories. So I read a lot of her short stories with the hopes of kind of being inspired by her with this telling. And what I found is that her themes, her characters, are just as relevant today as they ever were in the 50s and 60s. So I was bound to just experiment with these quirky, dangerous characters that are in these dangerous situations where violence is always potential, like immediate violence,
right,
out of the blue. So that was what was very interesting to me. And as it turned out, I was able to get it in the hands of a dear friend of mine who you mentioned before, Casey Clark, who has ample experience as a director of film. For me, this was the first proper film that I had ever directed.
right.
Not as a writer, but as a director. So I brought him in. He was a co-director on the project, and boy, that was the number one best move that I made on this project. I fancy myself to be a good, not great, but a good actor's director. I come from an acting background. But I felt that Casey was needed as a technical director. And thank goodness, he kept the set moving while I'm over, having coffee, just talking with actors about, clouds in the sky. So, so that was, that's the start of it. I wrote Fade In around 2014.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, the story had changed quite a bit. The story, the one that you saw, has very little to do with the initial script that I wrote.
Okay. I mean, it's an interesting one because quite often you do kind of get these co-director pairings where one is more technically focused, the other is more performance focused. In this case, it seems to have worked really well because the script, you mentioned that the script was redone considerably. But one of the things that struck me about it within a few minutes of the movie starting is how much it embraces the rule of show, don't tell. As the film is something like 25 minutes long, so I think a fifth of it, the first fifth of the movie, doesn't actually have any dialogue in it. But there's so much in terms of the production design, in the props, the pictures that actually start telling the story of the son that had died overseas, of the mother that has apparently run out on the family, the amount of bitterness towards her, the kind of picture with her sort of face scratched off, but the girl's name kind of written in over her pregnant stomach. Just things like that just kind of really sow a lot of seeds. So there's obviously a lot of story going on there. and there's a lot of sort of technical know-how on display as well. The opening shot is just a really impressive aerial shot that comes straight into the world that we then inhabit, which gives a real sense of scale to the whole story. Um, and then, of course, you have all of that underpinned by the amazing performances of Sophia Salas and David Triaca, and just how pained they all are. So, how much was both of? So, how much of that was in terms of the technical, in terms of the showing visually? How much of that was how you envisioned it, or were you more entrenched in the performance end of that process?
Well, I'm very visual, very visual. It was super close to what I had imagined. The technical aspect of that, I can credit our DP, Pete Mikulshevitz, teaming up with both Casey and I. Casey is a very visual person as well. So it was, we needed to start out, as you said, kind of showing the scope of this world, with the idea, and this is something Casey and I had talked about for probably 2 years, about having to, being able to make this story more personal to the viewer, because there's some extremes in this story. There's extreme grief that that pushes a man to give himself permission to push a button and kill, mass murder people. So what we wanted to do is make it a little bit more personal, but it's hard to do that, with those aforementioned extremes, right?
Yeah.
Without going into, big tent picture spectacle with blow-ups and stuff, right? So what we wanted to do is just have the viewer just kind of peer inside this man for a day. So what we did is we imagined a spirit descending to Earth and just being curious. So with that, a lot of it was the POV of the camera. So that the opening scene that you mentioned is, it was the start. It was establishing what we wanted to do, and that is, like an Icarus type thing, just descending down, and and just being curious about this man. Why is there gunfire? What does that gunfire mean? And then, as far as your the lack of dialogue statement, and thank you, by the way, for noticing that. That's it was quite intentional. I particularly love film that show, exposition being an, what is on camera, and I feel like we did a really good job of establishing the setting, the situation, the emotional situation that these two characters are in, the grandfather and his granddaughter, the desperation, the being shell-shocked, the need to cling on to loved ones who passed, and have the tenderness and the need for each other on display as well. These two characters absolutely needed each other, and as it turns out, they're stuck with each other. So that was very important to us. But yeah, the lack of dialogue and the use of soundscape
Yeah.
to assist with that was really what we set out to do. And to utilize the heat in Georgia and the southern United States, the heat is being oppressive and like a
Mm.
wet blanket on
Mm.
top, and creating the sweat, and just kind of the need to just like shed things that are oppressive,
Yeah.
and hence the need for redemption and need for redirection in someone's life.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting how the technical aspects of the film are used to communicate um, that sort of spiritual position of where Pap is. Um, there's his interaction with his granddaughter, who is just this beautiful soul. But you can kind of the way the whole thing is established, you kind of get the sinking feeling that she is going to be pulled into this whole spiral of sort of bitterness and darkness that he is so deeply entrenched in as well. And the fact that she's so precocious and she's so alive just makes that um, all the more heartbreaking, really, when you kind of see where she's more than likely going to end up. And the fact that all she really wants to do is just to be with her granddad and for them to
Right.
just be together. And when you kind of contrast that with his absolute focus on this mission he's now taken on, the way that the film is actually shot, the way that the sound, as you mentioned, helps that, is actually really, really interesting. I mean, there's one particular moment where the granddaughter is pretending she's in the middle of a firefight. This is just as they're about to leave on their journey.
Right.
And you hear her shout incoming as if there's an incoming grenade. And then you cut to the aerial shot of the road, and then the wind going by actually kind of sounds like an explosion.
Right.
And stuff like that is amazing. It kind of gives the impression of Pat really just to his core being immersed in what he believes is a war that he has to win.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
so how much were the crew as a whole kind of on board or aware of that vision as a whole, and how much did that kind of play into the way in which they kind of carried out the sound design, the sound recording, the cinematography, and so on?
Well, our cinematographer Pete had been locked into the project from the get-go. I can remember several years ago sitting at a reading and him there, and it
Mm.
was years ago. Like he dedicated himself early on to this project, and um was really open to our vision. And as far as a technical, um, man, I needed him so much, and I believe
Yeah.
Casey needed him so much. Just his use, his desire to just make it the way that not only we wanted it, but he wanted it, and how they coincided. I mean, there was most of this film was shot on a Movi kit, right,
Okay.
with a red dragon, and this guy was, in the hottest weather in September in Georgia's history, was strapped to this
Wow.
heavy machine, uh, long days. So his commitment, his technical expertise was uh, was a large part of this. Sound has always been very important. The quality of sound in independent film, I do realize that if it's not spot on 100% of the time, that the viewer immediately goes to it takes them out of the movie and it goes, yeah, oh, damn, that's right. This is a low budget independent film. So it was very important for us, if not probably more important than the visual of the film, to make the sound a character, and a character that was strong and well heard. And fortunately, we had one of the best sound designers or recorder in, I believe, in the Southeast doing this. He had invented this way of doing some kind of 360-degree recording. Don't ask me to explain that any more than I just did. So he delivered more than we expected.
Right.
So with that, we had to get a designer to serve that. Hey, our sound person served our story, so we need to just take it to the next level and really serve the story with that post-production.
Pap, if I come with you to the city, I'll cheer you up.
I'm sure, Ricky. Just a day or so.
It's going to be really nice having Ricky around. I mean, if you want me to take her for more than a day. So, why me?
You're thinking thoughts, right? Here's one. Why don't you track down that little girl's egg donor? Tell her I've got no one left.
I'm very, very proud of the sound on this film. I always tell people to respect the film and watch it with a good sound system, because you will be surprised. There's a lot of, we tell the story with the sound. The sound in a lot of cases is the soundtrack. We only used practical sound in the film, except for those moments where that spirit that I was talking about, might have had an influence on, a soundscape, right? As far as the cast goes, that's an interesting story. David Triaca, who plays Pap in the film, he and I met in 1997. I took an acting class with him. And, the second I walked into the room, I was just mystified. There was a lot of danger in the way that he taught. And I'm really attracted to danger. Violence just on the edge of every interaction with someone just interests me. And I'm a pacifist for the most part. I've gotten into 2 fights in my life. Not counting the daily fights I have with my wife that are not physical, but are definitely emotional. But I really am attracted to people who can go off. And I felt that this man had that. And for some reason, he latched onto me as one of his students. And I latched onto him as it turned out, as a mentor. Maybe a year after that, we started talking about working together. He gave me a book called The Architect and Emperor of Assyria. It's a two-person play. And he's like, okay, Chris, we need to do this. And when he said that, it floored me. I was just shocked that this guy would present me with this material, which is really heavy material, and to produce it. But of course, things don't turn out as an artist, things don't turn out the way you expect them to do. It was never done. But what it did is just kind of opened up dialogue between he and I about production. So long story short, I began writing something with him in mind. I knew that I wanted to see him on film. I'd seen him on stage, but I knew I wanted to see him on film. And he had taken a hiatus. Since he did Pabst Manifesto, he had not acted in film for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of pulled him into this. He was aware of the story early on. I kept him abreast of the story, and he knew that he was going to play the lead in it. And he was there in the early table reads. And, the discussion between he and I just solidified my intuition that he would be great to play this. I'm so happy that he is winning these Best Actor awards in these festivals. As a guy who was my mentor initially, to be able to say that I'm largely responsible for his accolades. It brings me joy, and it's well deserved on his part. Regarding the little girl, Sophia Salas, we had for maybe 2 years we had cast that role. We had found a wonderful actor who is a stage actor, who was able to. She was a Southern actor, but she would come up and audition for Broadway. She'd been on Broadway. And when she would come up, because David is based in New York City, we were all able to get together and, rent space and have David and this young actor just get to know each other, just do that, just play in the studio, right? And just become tender and be able to finish each other's sentences. And it was working really well. It was one of those things where these people, when they first got into the room, they knew each other. So I was like, wow, That's a really good sign. So fast forward, we've already got the money. We've got the date scheduled for production. We're about for principal production. We're about 2 weeks before making the trip down to Georgia. And our actress, she got another job. She got a wonderful, Broadway workshop job with some, big time people. And she's like, I can't do it. And I was like, that is fine. Like you do you, sweetheart.
Yeah.
You are amazing, and this works for you. And then I hang up the phone and I start, oh my God, 2 weeks. What are we going to do? So we had gotten, fortunately, we had made a really good relationship with one of the best agents on the Southeast, and particularly for children. So she was able to send us like 15 other girls. Right? Okay. After we had already seen about 20 in the initial casting, we're 2 weeks out, and we're on Zoom auditioning these children. With the fire behind us, because we, money was already spent for these dates, and
right.
So, wow. So we fought over this one young lady, Casey and I did, and I won, and he would admit that. And so 2 weeks, 1 week now, we informed her that she won the position, And we all showed up in Georgia. And when she gets there with her wonderful parents, by the way, she gets there and they inform us that, you know what, this is the first film she's ever done. It's really the first time she's been on a film set. So I was like, oh no, please. And she shows up and she is the most relaxed person on the set.
Right.
She's literally at play, right? She's in a sandbox. Like, she is just raring to go and having fun.
Amazing.
Knew the character, more than knew the lines, only a little bit of direction. And she was just nailing it. And you'll notice in the film that, she doesn't say much. It's all here. It's all in the eyes. It's all in her movement. But those eyes just show the grief and the battle wounds that this little girl is going through.
Yeah.
She is having to live with a grouchy old man, knowing that her father is never coming home from Afghanistan. And so she's a tormented 8-year-old. And Sophia, that's her resting face in this film. Yeah. Right? We had nothing to do with that. You can't tell a kid that, okay, here's the situation, right? Go and do it. Especially something as heavy as loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were fortunate that this young lady, she fortunately doesn't have that experience to draw from, but her eyes were just filled with hurt, and it just resonated in these scenes with her. So, that's one of those things that just lucky to have been able to cast at the last second and get her and just have her show up and do her stuff. It was a very physical role. So, her internal conflict and the physical conflicts of being dragged around by her grandfather, they're tough. They're really tough. And, it's hard to work with children, but she made it a pleasure. As far as the other principal actor, the role of Tammy, her aunt who was estranged, where Pap drops her off to go about his business, his mission of that revenge that he's planning on doing. So he drops her off with Tammy. So Tammy is, talking about fortunate in this production. Tammy is played by Stephanie Kurtzuba. Stephanie is, I call her one of Scorsese's girls. She's worked with Scorsese twice. She was she was in The Wolf of Wall Street. More recently, she was in The Irishman. She played De Niro's wife. She's way out of my league. But you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to show her the script. It was an earlier version of the script. And, I was scared to death. But she agreed to read it. And a couple of days later, I saw her in the street, not literally laying in the street, but I saw her on the sidewalk. And I was like, hey, have you had a chance to read that? And she looked at me and she says, Chris, this is one of the most powerful scripts I've read. She's been in the business forever. She's done she's worked with some of the iconic directors and writers of our time. And she tells me that. And of course, I don't believe it. I was like, you're just saying that because, our kids play together and you've got to come to my son's birthday party next month. And, you're just friendly, you're friendly. And I'm just, this silly, stupid storyteller that has a larger than life imagination, but what do you know? And I was like, well, we're going to be, it is obviously low budget. We're going to be SAG, the Screen Actors Guild here in America. We're going to be a SAG low budget film. So, you'll be working for scale. It's going to require one day of your work. So, hey, you'll be making, literally, you'll make more money coming to my son's birthday party than you will, at least with the piñata and getting the candy, right? And she looked me in the face, Nigel, and she says, I would do this for a half a piece of pizza.
Wow.
And I was like, well, of course you will. I'm this, no, but I was floored.
Wow.
And, she did some rehearsal with David just to get them to where they know each other. And just it wasn't intensive. It was probably 2 hours of rehearsal, months before our principal shoot. But to just kind of, give her big time credit and honor her. We shot in September of 2019. The night before she was supposed to be in Georgia for the shoot, she was walking the red carpet with Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese for the New York opening of The Irishman.
That's amazing.
So, she leaves those parties. She hops on the plane, the very last row in the plane, comes down, is picked up in Atlanta, Georgia by my wife, our executive producer, Trinisa, picked up by her and driven for 2 hours to our set.
Amazing. That's dedication.
Stephanie had, just a humbling, experience for me. Stephanie shows up with her mascara still on, eyelash extensions, fancy nails, and greasy hair from all the products that the makeup people and the designers put in her hair for the opening, for the screening of The Irishman. And I looked at her. I'm like, "This is perfect. Look at your hair. This is great." And she's like, yeah. So she shows up. We do some, makeup stuff, and I spent 10 minutes speaking with her about her character, and she had a few questions. She had a good bit of insight, and she shows up on set every single take, just wham, 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 incredibly professional, bringing really great choices to the character, and has been getting accolades. She is she's been nominated for quite a few supporting actor roles. She's agreed to do media for us, this little project. She's agreed to do media for us, with the response, like, of course, why wouldn't I? I am so happy with the way this turned out. So, and you might have noticed, being the expert that you are, a lot of the scenes were these long takes, and particularly the scene that she was in was a very long take. Those are difficult for actors. Those are difficult for directors, for camera, sound, everyone that's involved. Those are technically very tough. And we did 7 takes of that convenience store scene.
Right.
We could have used any of hers, right? She just was on, just mesmerizing. And when you watch the film, she brings a lot of humor. She finds that humor. I mean, I wanted that moment, that scene to be humorous. It needed to bridge that desperation that we see in Act 1 to, Act 3 of just a really hellish type situation in Act 3. Yeah. So she found those moments of humor, and at the same time, she brought that danger that I so love. So, needless to say, these are the people that I want to spend my creative moments with, and I'm very happy. This is my first film that I ever co-directed, but I'm very fortunate that this group of people are like family. It's very rare that you get that. There's a lot of egos that are involved with the making of film. I'm just attracted to people who are empathetic and who are sensitive and who are aware that we all need ego, but artists are better off keeping the ego at bay. And these people do.
That's great. I mean, so with such a tight crew, I mean, and cast, I would imagine that there is a certain bond that's required and a certain emotional understanding that's required to get on board with the subject matter, because as you mentioned previously, it's very heavy subject matter, especially when so much of it depends on how well a young actor like Sophia Salas kind of gravitates and embraces that role. Did you have much trouble, or did you hit many roadblocks in terms of trying to get across what you were actually going for? Because the premise is actually quite heavy and quite emotive. It also comes obviously at a time where America itself is at a bit of a cultural crossroads as well, and that particular subject matter can be quite sensitive to a lot of people. So not only have you got the key or the principal cast, but you also have the actors, the background actors, playing the people that are in the mosque that plans to attack as well. So was there kind of a broad understanding as to what the story ultimately was about, and in what ways did people kind of come together to support that once they did understand?
So all the top line people were people who just gravitated to the story. I didn't really have to justify any of it to them. Okay, fortunately. Now, Sophia, the young lady, we didn't get into the theme so much. There was no need to. And it could also, she could be fearful in judging and not so much being playful, being open to it, right? And I have to credit her parents, because her parents, she only had her sides. They had read a little bit and described some of the situation, the overall situation, but didn't get, thank God, didn't get into the nitty gritty, and so, she only knew what she had to do, and she only knew what her character personally was going through. She, so those were all on board. So our editor got the screenplay before she had seen any of the footage. And I was like, well, what did you think? You sure you want to do this? And she's like, yes, the story was good. Yeah, it's all right. And I'm like, oh no, she hates it. But she's Polish. English is her probably fourth language. And so, and she's also very stoic. I learned as I learned. So I felt like I had to get her on board, like really emotionally tied to this for her vision. And as it turns out, that's just her personality and probably a little bit of her culture. Not to rah. I'm ready for this. So I had to overcome that. A little bit of my ego was involved with that, but I came that. And right at the start of the pandemic is when we started editing it. So she was very happy. She gave us great notes. She was happy with the script, but we had to do our post-production just like you and I are. It all had to be online. And again, her patience, her willingness to listen, to really take in the story as it developed was immaculate. So initially there was a little bit of fear that Matilda Kawa is her name, wonderful editor. It was a little bit of fear that she wasn't going to understand where we were coming from, and she might judge a lot of the material. That wasn't the case. Just the opposite. We wanted a female editor. We felt like we wanted that sensibility, the feminine sensibility. And it turns out it is definitely there.
Yeah.
And as far as the extras, knew nothing about what they were doing. They came in, they were day workers. They came in, many of them, drove 2 hours to get to the set. And they took direction extremely well. Long takes, right? Again, they were long takes. And I feel personally that they were, at the end of this film, they were as important as Pap. They were as important as Ricky, the character of the little girl, because they were going to be victims.
Yeah.
And them just, coming out of their worship service and just being people that are starting their day, that are just continuing their day. Children included. They pulled it off. And again, the sounds that we were able to capture from the extras played a big role in that finale, in Pap's reaction to everything. So, to their credit, they were wonderful without knowing what in the world they were doing. I mean, how they were placed within the story.
Of course. And that point's an interesting one, because it kind of leads into why make a story like this, because there's kind of a presentation of the people around Pap as victims in waiting, almost, from Ricky to the worshippers at the mosque that he intends to bomb. I'm not going to go into the details of how the film ends. I want people to see it and take it in for themselves. But at its core, there is a very overt statement of the fact that people are just people, and how one group of people perceives another group of people can be the source of conflict. But at the end of the day, they are literally just people. And so many of them are blissfully unaware of the intentional direct hatred that this person has toward them for an event that they have no idea is probably even taken place. And I think that feeds quite interestingly or quite nicely into your overall objectives for Sparkyboom and the kind of films you want to make, the kind of stories you want to tell. You make a statement about embracing sort of the idea of the New South, and the Southern United States has kind of a unique relationship kind of almost to the rest of the country because of its history, the legacy of slavery in the Civil War, and everything that came after that. Now, you telling this story, again, going back to the fact that people are just people and they have their traumas and they have their conflicts and their struggles and journeys. What is it, number one, that made you want to tell a story like this? And what is the kind of vision of the New South, as it were, that you want to put forward in the stories that you tell after this?
Yes, this film, it was influenced by, and I needed to tell it just by headlines, global headlines. At the time I first sat down to write it, ISIS was in full swing. In America, everyone was talking about terrorism. We were just coming out of the hell that was 9/11 here in the States and how it affected the entire culture of the United States. We were coming out of it. We're never going to be out of it, but people were making stories about it and had opinions on it. And they were, the PTSD was still there, but it wasn't, there was a relief there. So that fed into the idea of, we're getting back on track now, but there's always that possibility of another one happening. And, in the media, ISIS and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were still just headline. And that was when I first started writing it. So I started, thinking, what if, as a result of our hatred for people who are not necessarily like us, culturally, because this is primarily a Christian nation, and Islam at that time, for the most part, was demonized, and so I was thinking, well, what if this happened on our soil, and roles were reversed, and there was, an average guy, American, white, male. What if he was the antagonist in a story? And of course, we had guys like that did domestic terrorism in America. Timothy McVeigh. There's been quite a bit. The KKK was the Ku Klux Klan was a domestic terrorist group. So I mean, we did. It's not. It is part of our history. But it wasn't until really recently that domestic terrorism has come into the forefront in America. It's like, just based off of what is going on in the world. So headlines really kind of forced me and influenced me to tell this story. Regarding the Sparkyboom, how we're moving forward, I am super attracted to the what is happening beneath someone's exterior. So, for instance, every family has those dark secrets, and
Mm.
we're all smiling and telling jokes, and eating together, but there's always those things that are very negative that are in our subconscious, that are just under the surface. It's universal. We all have it.
Yeah.
Specifically for the southern United States, southeastern, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Mississippi. I mean, they most definitely, as you mentioned, have a history, and how culturally they've influenced, American history since the get-go.
Mm.
And we're still, in many cases, we've kind of circled back to the attitudes prior to the Civil War in America, in many cases. And I want to tell stories that investigate that culture that I grew up in,
Mhm.
with the knowledge that there are some really great people in
Yeah.
the southern United States. Really great people. And there's always that gray area with everyone, right? There's, we in America, we everything's extreme, everything's fanatical. There's the far right, there's the far left, and God forbid if they ever agreed on anything. But you know what? Between those extremes is that gray area, that touch and go area of the human psyche and the human culture and collective consciousness that is for me really worth investigating. It's
Yeah.
it's the most interesting part of humans. One day I'm conservative in many ways. Another day I'm ultra liberal in a lot of ways. One day I judge someone for that happens to be another race, for cutting me off in traffic. Another day I'm attending a black church, and worshiping, so there's just so much rich material there in the gray area.
Yeah.
That's what Sparkyboom is. That's my mission for that.
So how well do you think short film assists with that mission? Because a lot of people would want to do this kind of work in the feature film space. This particular short film, I found that very, very powerful. Would you continue to use short film as a format to do that? And if so, what is it about short film you think makes it an effective tool in exploring the gray areas, as you put it?
A short film forces you to get in there, right? Especially if it's a drama.
Yeah.
Just get in there quickly so that you can tell your story and get out at the appropriate time. And I think that that pressure to do that, I think for me, it really inspires that. You have to get those characters. They have to be relatable.
Yeah.
Within the first minute, and so to present them that gray area within the first minute or two, if you can do that well, then that's half of the battle.
Absolutely.
So I think that what's really great about that is because people, they know that the viewer is going to sit, and they know that it's a short film, and either they go in and within the first minute they've made their judgment. It's like, oh well, this is this is it's a challenge to the filmmaker that's doing a short film, and with material that investigates that gray area, it's even more difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think in this particular case, you did a fantastic job, and we're very, very excited to see what the next projects are and where you go with that. I think one of the lasting impacts of perhaps Manifesto is how much it gets you thinking about how close you might come to being the catalyst for disaster when trying to enact what you see as your own personal justice. And I think, it doesn't beat you over the head with morality, nor does it shy away from the fact that an act of evil is an act of evil, irrespective of the motivation for it. It's just exquisitely put together. It's exquisitely performed. I think people are really going to like it when they see it. Where can people see perhaps Manifesto at the moment? Where is it going to be screened next?
So it is screening in the Beaufort International Film Festival in Beaufort, South Carolina. It's going to be screening on Friday, the 24th of February. And that's a festival that David Triaca, who plays Pap, is up for Best Actor. So it will be screening there. You can go to my website. You can view the trailer on my website, get a little bit more information about the team and the company.
Absolutely. But we hope that, best of luck to all of you. And for the Best Actor Award, hope that goes your way as well. And fingers crossed that we get to put it on our platform in the not too distant future as well. We'll certainly be aiming for that. So a huge thank you for joining us today. Anyone enjoying this episode, you can see more filmmaker interviews on our YouTube channel. So there's a link in the description to our previous episodes, as well as to the perhaps Manifesto website as well, so you can find out more about the team and about the movie, check out the trailer, and keep your ear to the ground as to where you might be able to see it. You can subscribe to our channel to see all of our content, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications of new episodes. If you prefer to join us from podcast land, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more just by going to cameolaunch.com/podcast. As always, don't forget to head to cameolaunch.com to check out our full range of reviewed short films available for absolutely £0 and 0 pence. You can also rent our lineup of short films currently on the festival circuit for £1.49 each for 48 hours, or subscribe to that lineup to get on-demand access to all of the films in that collection. And as always, you can stay up to date with all things Cameo Launch by going to our site, cameolaunch.com, and signing up to our newsletter, or by following us on the socials. So that's at Cameo Launch on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So thank you so much for joining in. Chris, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so humbled. Thank you, Nigel.
No, thank you. And best of luck with the rest of the festival run and future projects as well. And to everybody watching and listening, please stay safe, and we'll see you next time.